Today we'll talk about the astrology of the third week of October 2024, specifically October 13th through the 19th. First off, I wanted to say thanks to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to get the monthly Magical Elections ebook, which teaches you how and when to make astrological talismans, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Gryphon. You will get access to astrological and magical content. This is a very busy week, astrologically speaking, so I hope you can settle in for a nice long video. October 13th, Mercury at 29 Libra squares Pluto in Capricorn. This is Mercury's last major aspect before moving into Scorpio. We can think of Mercury's square as his encounter with a doorman of the realm of the dead, as Mercury is literally poised at the threshold of Scorpio, which we'll discuss in a moment. Mercury squaring Pluto represents a point of tension between the principle of eternal movement and communication between distant parts of the cosmos, represented by Mercury, and the principle of the unchanging stillness of death, represented by Pluto, the lord of the underworld. The square tends to show unresolved tensions that don't clearly come out in favor of one planet or another. So the square therefore represents an encounter without immediate resolution. Do we come out in favor of alchemical transmutation or in favor of the unchangeability of massive wealth or the finality of death? More than just this aspect will determine where we land, but the contest between these two forces will emerge around this time. October 13th, Mercury will enter Scorpio. As you may recall from Venus passing through Scorpio, this sign ruled by the Scorpion represents the dark, hazardous, and poisonous parts of the universe and of ourselves. To help you get a concrete picture of Scorpio, in the home, Scorpio represents the toilet and any place where we keep hazardous cleaning products like the cabinet under the sink, both of which are highly necessary places, just ones that we don't like much and we may not think of very much. Remember that astrology simultaneously describes changes in the microcosm and the macrocosm, as they are really just two sides of the same coin of consciousness. So everything we talk about in these forecasts can be viewed from both an interior and an exterior perspective. Mercury is the deity of magic and of alchemical transformation, creating movement and catalyzing reactions between different ingredients. In Scorpio, Mercury passes through the underworld, bringing a breath of fresh air or perhaps the wind of change into its still, silent spaces. The underworld can mean the realm of unacknowledged emotions and trauma within, while simultaneously representing the underworld of organized crime and the places we don't like to think about in the macrocosm of society. Scorpio is everything that we turn away from, yet may still drive us or dramatically impact our world at large. These elements are always with us, and now Mercury offers the opportunity to acknowledge and then transform them. We will watch for Mercury's aspect while in Scorpio to determine what exactly is happening in that metaphorical cabinet under the sink, also known as Scorpio. October 13th, the Sun at 21 Libra will trine Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Remember that Jupiter and Saturn go direct and retrograde near their annual trine aspects to the Sun. So since Jupiter just turned retrograde recently, we know that we'll have to wait about 4 months for him to go direct around the time of the next Sun-Jupiter trine. That's just a little astronomical tidbit for you. In general, Jupiter's influence while retrograde will be more subdued. If you've ever had the experience of a Jupiter transit across a natal planet or point, often the retrograde transit will be more subtle in its manifestations than the direct transit. So now is an opportunity for us to realize some fairly subtle truths and to re-examine what truth really means in our lives. Both the Sun and Jupiter represent truth with a capital T, and as I sometimes tell my clients, here's our opportunity to work on the spiritual practice of identifying what in our lives and ourselves is real, capital R, defined as permanent, unchangeable, and perfect. Hint, not much. Sun trine Jupiter brings our chance to develop wisdom. October 14th, the Sun at 21 Libra squares Mars in Cancer. That very next day, we get to test that wisdom by encountering the realm of truth in tension with the principle of assertion, aggression, or destruction, represented by Mars in Cancer. We may need to understand that something needs to be destroyed in order for the truth and for life to shine through. Alternatively, we might need to protect truth from destructive forces that wish to obscure it by engendering conflict. This is part of our assignment now. Determine which scenario is the case, and then next steps will become clear. Generally, though, the Sun and Mars favor a courageous, involved approach rather than hiding from a problem. These are the two boldest, brightest, and brassiest planets, and being fearless is key to solving problems now. October 14th, Venus at 26 Scorpio opposes Uranus in Taurus. This is a combination that brings out the darkest themes of the myth of Medusa, the decapitated Gorgon. This myth is associated with Algol, the fixed star at 26 Taurus, which Uranus conjoins. You may know Medusa was the only mortal of the three Gorgon sisters whose very glands turned living beings to stone. She was decapitated by the hero Perseus, who took her head as a weapon against the sea monster, the Kraken. Historically, Medusa was depicted as sometimes monstrous and sometimes beautiful, a duality that this Venus-Uranus opposition illustrates very well. Venus is now in Scorpio, a sign associated with poison, and Medusa is well known for her head of snakes. The fact that Uranus and Venus are in opposition suggests a confrontation between the two facets of Medusa's monstrosities: her ability to literally petrify living beings symbolized by Uranus with the eye of Medusa, and her appearance as a beautiful but frightening woman signified by Venus in Scorpio. This opposition is therefore about seduction or attraction on the one hand, and destruction or death on the other. We are now on the horns of a dilemma, caught between that which attracts and yet destroys us. October 14th, Mercury's evening rise at 0 Scorpio happens. Rising from the sun's beams is a glorious moment for any planet, as it emerges from the conjunction with the sun, re-energized and ready to begin the work of the new synodic cycle. You may recall that the current Mercury synodic cycle, which began last month, occurred in Libra, and as such will focus on the themes of Libra's ruler Venus. She governs unity, peace, art, sexuality, and all matters concerning women. These are the areas that will be most actively creating transformation and change over the coming months. With Mercury emerging from the beams at 0 Scorpio, he is passing through Mars's realm of death and destruction, which he will change as he transits it. Because Mercury is passing through Scorpio, ruled by Mars, it is Mars who will be indirectly changed by Mercury transiting through Mars's nocturnal kingdom. Mars may find the ground shifting underneath his feet, and because Mercury now bursts into full view out of the beams, the changes may be dazzling or even shocking. If we are playing the role of Mars anywhere in our lives, we can expect our world and our home to start undergoing some changes as Mercury romps through our reality. October 14th, the Mars-Pluto opposition will enter its orb, 8 degrees, which will last until January 22nd, 2025. This is an astrological event that you won't find in any ephemeris just yet, but it's happening already nonetheless. Mars, whose traditional orb is 8 degrees, is now within that orb of an opposition to Pluto, and they will stay within 8 degrees until January 22nd, so over 3 months. This is an exceptionally powerful aspect in any event, since it concerns a superior planet, Mars, and an outer planet, Pluto, which, when they are combined, usher in major changes in the personal and especially in the collective. Both Mars and Pluto are associated with destruction, since Mars is the god of war, while Pluto rules the vast and silent realm of the dead. The other thing they have in common is that their appearance evokes fear and terror. For the next 3 months, these two planets will face off in an opposition, suggesting an ongoing confrontation between two mighty forces. Generally, we can expect to see a fight between those who identify with Mars as their standard bearer, in other words, those who promise to destroy, harm, and cut, and those who have great wealth and power in this world identify with Pluto. As you know from my videos by now, Pluto means the rich one in ancient Greek, since wealth in the ancient world came from underground, whether as crops or precious metals, and it all belonged to Pluto. Now, as to this confrontation with Mars, it doesn't look good for Mars for 3 reasons. One is due to the rule of planetary speed. Slower planets are always more potent than faster planets. Mars typically moves much faster than Pluto, even when Mars is retrograde. It's like the old saying, the dogs bark but the caravan moves on. He just won't make much of an impact on the larger events that are falling into place. The second reason for Mars's failure in the standoff is that Mars is weak by sign, as he will be in the sign of his fall, Cancer, starting January 6th. And most crucially, he will exit this opposition while still in Cancer, showing us how this all turns out. Third, Mars will be retrograde for much of this opposition, which means he's less able to make his influence felt, as is usually the case with retrograde planets. Mars has about a month of appearing strong, starting November 4th through December 6th when he's in Leo, until he stations retrograde. In December, when he stations retrograde and later, the wheels rapidly fall off the Mars bus, and in January, the whole bus just falls off a cliff while simultaneously on fire. You may recall the ongoing Mars-Saturn square in the fall of 2020. Mars tries it again this year, and against an even more formidable opponent. The thing about the square is that though the tension it represents may get resolved, that square did not carry the same sense of finality as the opposition. That is, even after defeat, a planet may come back from a square because things are not fully resolved. However, an opposition, which is what we're seeing this year, which divides the chart in two, is kind of like breaking something in half or breaking something off definitively. The opposition carries the meaning of a complete rejection and separation. October 15th, Venus at 27 Scorpio trines Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Now, the beauty of Venus will meet the overwhelming chaos of Neptune and embrace it. Remember that the goddess Aphrodite, Venus, was born from the sea, and there seems to be a kind of rebirth happening for Venus now as she revisits her place of origin. It's very symbolic that Venus, the embodiment of desire, emerged from the primeval chaos symbolized by the sea. It tells us something about the double nature of desire. On the one hand, it emerges from the darkest, most chaotic, and possibly dangerous parts of ourselves. On the other hand, desire is a key organizing principle by means of which we impose order and meaning on the universe. Desire tells us what is important and what isn't. The tricky part is nurturing desires conducive to personal and especially spiritual growth and letting the unhelpful desires wither on the vine. With the Venus-Neptune trine, we have a chance to acknowledge our desires, useful or not, and decide what is worth pursuing. October 17th is a full moon at 24 Aries. This full moon is ruled by Mars, who is in his fall in Cancer. The themes over the next 2 weeks will be decidedly martial, revolving around aggression, destruction, and separation. Individuals who strongly identify with Mars will experience a fall from grace, a decline in social status, which are all the meanings of the fall sign. Mars also squares the full moon axis, so all of this will play out very noticeably and publicly. This could apply to events on the public stage, but also in our personal lives. If we want to better understand the reason for Mars's fall from prominence, a major clue is Mars's opposition to Pluto in Capricorn, which is still applying and therefore intensifying. As I just explained, Mars is not going to come out well in his lengthy opposition and confrontation to Pluto. You simply do not win against the Lord of Death. The impulsive energy of Mars has no chance against the Lord of Wealth in the underworld, and he breaks his teeth in the attempt to storm Pluto's gates. The opposition between Mars and Pluto is the big story in this lunation, and likely several future lunations over the next few months where it will be prominent. And so watching it play out will be dramatic. Even as this plays out in public or in our personal outer lives, always remember one thing. The outer world is but a reflection of our internal state. So don't miss the parallel events going on within. In any case, this full moon will bring the building Mars-Pluto opposition to full consciousness and awareness, especially if they're aspecting something important in your natal chart, or if Mars is your Lord of the Year or other key Time Lord right now. October 17th, Venus at 29 Scorpio sextiles Pluto in Capricorn. Sextile aspects tend to be the weakest in producing events, in that they represent opportunities, but rarely do they compel action. Here, Venus and Pluto meet in a harmonious, friendly configuration, and it is notable because of its contrast with Mars, who is currently enjoying a showdown with the Lord of Death. In contrast, Venus gets a pass from Pluto as she exits the kingdom of shades. It's like Pluto holds the door for Venus and maybe even gives her a parting gift before she enters Sagittarius. Certainly, this shows that it's far better to embody the energies of Venus right now as contrasted with Mars. Embracing a unifying feminine energy is the way to success, in case there was any doubt. October 17th, Venus enters Sagittarius. This is a bright moment for Venus, who is bold and externally oriented in this Jupiter-ruled fire sign. While Venus doesn't have major dignity in Sagittarius, it's hard to see her passing through the sign of the greater benefic as a problem. This year, Venus will be put to the test as she passes through Sagittarius because she will square Saturn and oppose Jupiter during her transit through this sign. The larger picture of this transit is that Venus will encounter the forces that shape our world and have a chance to put her own stamp on events. Venus in Sagittarius, thematically, is about assembling and rallying the troops. I will let you in on a little secret about Venus. Every battle and every war needs Venus. Now, Sagittarius is the sign of the army with its projectile weapons and horses or engines of war. You may ask why, since everyone knows that wars are martial. And that is true. The war with your opponent is martial. But in order to engage, you must first unite your supporters and get them to act in concert in a coordinated way. This is why the ancient Mesopotamians saw Ishtar, the precursor to Venus, as the goddess of war. You need coordination and agreement before you can march off into combat. So, Venus's romp through Sagittarius is about rallying the troops and getting everyone to fight in formation to execute the grand plan. On a personal level, this is the best use of your Venusian energies now, getting everyone on the same page, making sure they're all facing the same direction before releasing their arrows. Thanks for watching. I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.